Hi viewers, welcome back to Sahara TV. My name is Adiola Fayon. This segment we want to talk about the state of the church in Nigeria. We're also addressing the state of the nation, but right now we want to focus on the state of the church in Nigeria. And to talk with me about this is Bishop Hassan Kukah. He's the head of the Catholic Diocese of Sokoto State in Nigeria. Bishop Kukah, welcome to Sahara TV.
Thank you very much, Adiola. Thanks for having me.
Sure. Let's go right into it, Bishop. At this point in time, what, in your opinion, is the state of the church in Nigeria?
Well, again, it depends on what you mean. Nigeria is going through some really very troubled times, politically, economically, socially. But the responsibility and duty of the church is to inspire confidence in the society. We market hope. So our responsibility and our duty is to continue to exercise that ministry. Of course, the last 1 year has been a very tough time for the entire members of the Christian community. But despite the provocation and the attacks by Boko Haram and so on, the church has continued to perform its duty and responsibility, namely calling on our citizens to remain calm and restrained, but also pointing out the path to the fact that there is better tomorrow and that it is important for us to continue to work together in harmony. That's our responsibility, and I think to that extent, we've tried to the best of our ability to keep hope alive.
So, Bishop, there has been a lot of arguments that the church is starting to become, to be taken over by materialism. Is this a statement that you will agree with?
Well, I mean, we are in the world, as St. Paul said, but we are not of the world. And it's also important to understand that materialism is not new. It's always been part of the DNA of humanity. Right from the very beginning of the mission of Jesus Christ himself, I mean, the fact that he was sold by Judas for some money introduced a completely different dimension to materialism. In the Acts of the Apostles, the apostles themselves had to deal with the problems of the kind of injustices that were creeping in as a result of people not being able to distribute the resources that were available to the community. So this is not a new development. But again, as I said, our responsibility, bearing in mind what Jesus Christ himself said, is to continue to rein society in, to point at higher ideals, that yes, a better society, a more equitable society is possible. So despite the temptations, I mean, which have become far more prevalent, especially with the rather superfluous gospel of prosperity that has taken advantage of the fears, the anxieties, and the poverty of our society, we continue to, especially we of the Catholic Church, have remained quite restrained, insisting that we cannot measure God's goodness to us by the amount that we have been able to corner. So yes, materialism poses a threat to our society. The degrading conditions around which Nigerians live compel us, to continue to insist on a much more equitable society, because as I said, that is our mission, and the church is not made up of just the cleric. There are many millionaires and billionaires who are part and parcel of the worshiping community. So our responsibility is not to tell people not to look for material things or to tell people not to seek wealth. It is to encourage people to seek wealth and seek all this, but in an honest and in a manner that is in keeping with the mind of the church and the mind of Christ.
So, Bishop, along that line, you recently condemned the jets recently given to Pastor Orise Jafo. I just want to hear your opinion about that. Is that something that you think the Bible encourages? I mean, what is your opinion about church founders owning private jets?
Look, first of all, I did not, for the avoidance of doubt, I wasn't talking, I didn't speak about Pastor Orise Jafo and his new claim. And frankly, in principle, I even have no problem with anybody who wants to own a plane, whether they are pastors or bishops or whoever they may be. My concern was more in the rather deceitful approach and the fact that this was being presented as a model of how people should relate with, or how people should measure God's blessings to them. So I have no problem. I mean, whether the Pastor Jafo wants to own a plane, for me, it's not a problem. But I think that what is a problem to me is that it is definitely not justifiable that any religious leader should count material wealth as evidence of, where the church ought to be heading. Especially when we consider the fact that, all this was happening at the time in which almost most of the area where Pastor Jafo himself pastors was underwater. So I'm not. For me, it's not a question of what he wants to do with his money, but it is that it is definitely not acceptable. That we create the impression that somehow this is the fashion that should become dominant in our society. If somebody has the money, fine, but we are not told that this is the proceeds of an individual's hard work. I do not see in anywhere in the world where any worshiping community can claim that they've been able to raise 7-point-something billion naira, to buy such a gift for their pastor. But most importantly for me, it is that amidst the squalor and the poverty that we face in Nigeria, these are not the kind of models that we should be hoisting for our people.
Bishop Kukah, what do you have to say to some Christians that have been really disturbed by that latest development, because it was all over the social media? A lot of people are starting to lose their trust in Christian leaders. What do you have to say to people like that who have a lot of questions on their mind, that there's a lot of poverty and some people are living at a lot of luxury? What do you have to say to people that are starting to question the authenticity of some church leaders or question their trust in them?
Well, in fairness to us, right across Africa, and I think in most parts of the world, placed side by side the political class and the economic class, religious leaders have definitely been, in terms of trust, I think almost everywhere you talk, many people will tell you that they trust their religious leaders more than those who manage their banks, more than those who manage the policy. It's not as if we are setting those kind of people up as those. We're not in competition. But I think it overstates the issues to talk about people losing trust in religious leaders. No. I mean, one person cannot be an expression of what ordinary people think about religious leaders. It's not everybody who is going up and down buying planes. And in any case, I think our responsibility is to also appreciate the fact that it is individuals who are actually bringing out this money. So my main concern should be with the sources of the wealth itself. For us as a church, we don't have the mechanism. We don't have a police force. We don't have a court. We don't have a prison. So it is actually to insist that the society becomes much more functional. I believe that if somebody went out and bought a private jet in the United States of America, nobody will stop you, but at least the IRS will be interested in finding out, the source of your wealth. It is the lack of and total absence of these mechanisms of restraint, that is allowing people to get away with so much. And frankly, as far as I'm concerned, it really should not matter whether people pose as pastors or they are bank managers or they are truck pushers or whatever. It is that we need to create a society where the rule of law applies, where there is transparency and where there is honesty. I'm not happy that my people trust me rather than their politicians. My responsibility is to insist that my people trust me, but that they also trust those who run our society. So it's a multi-track approach that we must adopt, to ensure that religion does not occupy or replace the state. That is the temptation that we have, that amid such disorientation, Nigerians are wont to turn to their religion But we don't want to fall into the pit of what Karl Marx talked about, religion being the opium of the people. Religion must have the critical ability to criticize society, to point out how a better society can be constructed, while also encouraging many of the political actors. Because those who run the polity, those who run the economy, they're all coming to church on Sunday or going to the mosque on Friday. So the point to be made is that it overstates the issues to assume that simply because a few people are making comments on the social media, that this is necessarily a statement of what 99% of Nigerians are feeling. I do not think that any of this is evidence of a dwindling of trust or religious leaders. Absolutely not. But clearly...
Go ahead.
But clearly, people have an idea about the kind of moderation that they expect from those who lead them as religious leaders. So, and we don't have to wait, quote unquote, for the law to catch up with us. It is our responsibility to ensure that in a society of such massive poverty, we represent the face of what a better society can look like.
Okay, yeah, so Bishop,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask quickly that talking about people having a lot of trust in their religious leaders, would you say that these religious leaders should be politically partisan, as in should they be politically involved, since they have access to the masses? They can, it's whatever they say that a lot of people buy into. So should they be politically involved in the affairs of the country, or should they just limit their involvement to the pulpit?
Well, as you have seen in other parts, the very fact that you can kick a football well doesn't mean you necessarily will go and win elections. That's the story of George Weah in Liberia. The very fact that you can play good music doesn't mean you can be president. That's the story of the man in Haiti and a lot of others. I mean, if you're in the public space and people are happy with what you're doing, I do not think you should exchange that trust for something personal. And for me as a priest, the last thing I will contemplate will be to betray that trust by seeking to exploit it. Were I to want to run for public office simply because of the trust that people have in me.
No, I'm not talking about running for public office. I'm talking about speaking out about what is going on.
Well, no, but if you're talking about just speaking out, I mean, what have we been doing? Every time we turn the newspaper, I mean, in fairness, as far as the situation in Nigeria is concerned, there are volumes and volumes of books that are available of what even just the Catholic Bishops' Conference of Nigeria has been saying over the years. So definitely the religious, the members of our religious community, both Muslims and Christians, we have definitely not been the most quiet of constituencies. People have been loud and clear. But the point I'm making is Nigeria is no longer under a military rule. And as you see with what happened in South Africa, after Mandela became president in 1994, Archbishop Tutu and others had to reposition themselves. We cannot continue to, quote-unquote, make noise in a democracy, because representative democracy is also about people gaining their voice. Voice is like the vital component of democracy. So our people cannot fold their hands and simply believe that mere condemnation of corruption is going to end corruption tomorrow. So by having representatives, by being able to elect those who represent you, our people have gotten back their voices. We can only continue to encourage them. But in the final analysis, Nigerians cannot simply continue to stand by as bystanders, assuming that religious leaders will do their dirty work for them. But the best we can do is to state things the way they ought to be. But our people have to be up and doing.
So do you approve of religious leaders praying publicly for corrupt leaders that people know that these people are corrupt, but they're able to bring in some good amount of money to the church, and religious leaders pray for them? Do you approve of that?
Well, let's be fair. I mean, I don't have if all men and women were angels, I will have no work to do. My responsibility and my business is to continue to encourage people to live upright lives. But I don't have a police force. I don't run EFCC. I don't run all the security agencies. It's not, frankly speaking, it's really not my business. because people who tend to say that religious leaders should to find out the sources of people's wealth. Why would I take responsibility for finding out how people made their money? If somebody says to me, this is the business that he's doing, and that this is what he's decided to do, it is the business of the taxman. It's the business of those who gave him a contract. It's the business of the security and other agencies, whether it's from the media to the police to so on and so forth. It is their business to investigate the sources of people's wealth. That is not my responsibility as a priest. So if somebody came to my church, for example, and made a donation, if you think that person is corrupt, well, you can tell me. I'll be more than happy, and I'll probably think twice. But I think that beyond that, you should be able to tell the relevant agencies so that that kind of person can be arrested and prosecuted. But we cannot assume that everybody who makes a donation to the church necessarily is a thief. I don't think that is really the correct way to go. But most importantly, it is that if our security agencies were up and doing, we will not be having the kind of problems that we are having. But it is too much to assume that the church should be told that, that will pose the question of whether I can pray for somebody who is corrupt. If I know that somebody is corrupt, I'm not sure of the measure of corruption. But what I'm saying, if my parishioners know that somebody is corrupt, we will do our best, because those we try to put up for public office in the churches, we have screening committees that try their best to. In fact, I just inaugurated a committee in the diocese, and one of the things we're looking at, we've laid down conditions to participate in any of the church communities in the diocese. We need people to tell us the kind of business particular people do. We try our own best to run our checks in terms of the transparency with which people do what they do. But beyond that, I cannot say that everybody who offers money to the church, I'll have to stop the person and ask them what is the source of their wealth.
All right, so let's talk about you a little bit, Bishop. You played a very vital role during the regime of Olusegun Obasanjo. You were on Uputa panel and others, but it seems that you have retreated. What's going on?
I don't know what you mean by I've retreated. I'm not sure I understand what you mean by retreat. By I've retreated.
Were you disappointed in the regime of Olusegun Obasanjo, especially
I'm not. Look, I don't want to be personal. Obasanjo didn't run a country as a dictator. Okay, he was elected by a political party. He won elections twice. Whether those elections were contested, that's a different matter. But what Nigerians think, my belief personally, is that I think we are too impatient with our leaders. We will never have a perfect situation, and Nigerians better internalize those realities. There are no angels sitting anywhere who are going to come and solve our problem. The tragedy with Nigeria is that almost we seem to be progressing in reverse, because every leader of yesterday was either better than the one today or whatever. So if you ask me about Obasanjo's administration, it will depend on what aspect of Obasanjo's administration are you talking about. If I was visible, it was because I served in the Oputa panel, I served as a member of the Political Reform Conference, I served as a member of the Electoral Reform Committee under Yaradua. I served as a one-man committee looking to end the conflict between Shell and Ogoni under Obasanjo, under Yaradua, and now under Jonathan. We've just barely concluded a lot of that. So if you ask me, I think that what we need is to develop the capacity to find out, this leader did this well, he didn't do this well, he did this well, he didn't do that well. People will tell you, if you condemn Obama, we may have gotten a few things wrong. But, Americans are sincere enough to say, well, he took us out of Iraq. Or the healthcare bill, the healthcare law is something we can celebrate. So clearly we cannot, in Nigeria, as we tend to do, condemn every leader with one single brush. So if you ask me about Obasanjo or about Abacha, there's no Nigerian head of state who has come and not done something good and something bad. So it's a question of which good thing can we build on and which bad thing can we discard. That would be my approach. If you ask about my being in retreat, well, my dear, I can tell you that I have at least, literally, there's hardly any month that I'm not speaking somewhere. But at the same time, it's not a popularity contest. I'm now a bishop. I've got a lot of other things to do. I write when I can, and I write less in the newspapers now. But from the point of view of my public speaking, I I probably speak in not less than 30 or 40 fora every year. So it's a very busy time for me.
All right, Bishop, while we're talking about country leaders, how would you describe the present regime of Goodluck Jonathan?
I think in fairness, I mean, President Jonathan has only been president for just slightly over 1 year. He obviously has 3 more years to go. We also must be a little bit honest.
He served 1 year before he was elected, though. So
yeah, but still, the real point I'm making is that this has not been the best of times to be a president. The whole threat of Boko Haram and the social confusion that we are in has thrown up enough challenges. But again, I think it's important for Nigerians to appreciate the fact that I'm not speaking here for the president. All these condemnations, that is the easy part. Look at what is happening in Egypt. Okay, when was President Morsi, elected? Nigerians like to stand on the streets with hands in pocket, and all we can do is write articles and talk a lot of rubbish on the newspapers or talk a lot of rubbish on the media. But rolling our sleeves and getting the work done, or even having enough sense of moral revulsion to stand out there in the public square and say this is what we don't want. The truth of the matter is that in the media, in the church, literally right across the length and breadth of our society, the same people who are making noise and condemning government are the same people who are interested in having something or the other on the side. Try calling people out on a demonstration in Nigeria and see whether anybody will go anywhere. So for me, this is what a democracy is all about. It is people, individuals, groups that energize a democracy. So it's not enough for us to continue to treat President Jonathan as if he were a military dictator. Okay, he represents a political party, and if we are not happy with him, it's not enough for us to begin to behave as if we didn't elect him for a 4-year term. It is about preparing to throw him out if after 4 years he doesn't perform. If, on the other hand, we feel that he hasn't done enough and needs to get out, we know the process. Either you pressurize the people who represent you in the National Assembly to gather enough evidence and votes to impeach him. There are processes to be followed. It's not enough for us to continue to say, Jonathan is not doing well. And then Obasanjo has not done well. Yaradua has not done well. So this is what has become the narrative of Nigeria. But we are not prepared to make any form of sacrifice. And so we get the kind of government that I believe we deserve.
Also, Bishop, you made mention of Boko Haram, and I was going to ask you about that, because you actually live in Sokoto, and it seems like the Boko Haram menace is spreading, especially in the north. What do you think is responsible for this? And do you think that this can be, do you think we can overcome this at anytime soon?
Frankly, I mean, we can have a conversation about Boko Haram for 2 days or whatever. The problem with what we have in our hands is that we've not been able to, frankly, effectively diagnose the ailment. And I think that if we had been more discerning at the end of the election, I think a few things could have been done differently. Namely, a deliberate attempt to create a more representative and a more integrative government. Secondly, it would have been easy and possible to engage the opposition in a much more integrative manner. Most of that didn't happen, and in my view, it created the kind of vacuum that Boko Haram is now exploiting. Secondly, when the problem manifested itself, I think too many people stepped forward and presented rather dubious explanations as to what was happening. And those explanations became popular, i.e., these people don't like the president because he's a Christian, or people don't like the president because he's from the south. And yet, the chairman of the presidential campaign team was a Muslim from the north. So a lot of these rather superfluous but ill-informed narrative, which fed on the prejudices on the ground, just allowed the kind of vacuum, as I said, that the Boko Haram has exploited. Now, where we are now, I mean, the problem with where we are in Nigeria is that it's enough. It's not enough to talk about Boko Haram in the north. It is that the entire country is literally under siege. If you are not afraid of Boko Haram, you must be afraid of kidnappers. If you are not afraid of kidnappers, you must be afraid of armed robbers. Whether it's armed robbers in Lagos, kidnappers in the southwest, so but all these are clear manifestations of a state that is not only dysfunctional but lacks the capacity to restrain the aggressor, whatever may be his claims. So really, if you bring the problem down, it is again a question of the quality of governance and the quality of the institutions. Again, it may be easy to blame the president, but the president is not the Inspector General of Police. The president is not the one who runs the security agencies. So it's an entire series of institutions that have become so severely compromised right across the board. The recent attack last week of, let's say, the military establishment, the prestigious military establishment in Jaji, for example, in Kaduna State. It's not the kind of thing you can find an explanation for. But that is where we are now.
And Bishop Kukah, do you think that the government dialoguing with Boko Haram is the solution?
But the problem with the dialogue with Boko Haram is that, first of all, we are speaking from both sides of our mouth. One moment we say we don't know whom to dialogue with. And the problem that we face now in attempting to dialogue is that you're actually facing the dilemma of a blindfolded man, chasing a black cat in a dark room. If we don't know who represents Boko Haram, how do you know that the next telephone call claiming to be somebody who can speak on behalf of Boko Haram is not just somebody who is chancing his arm and wants to exploit the situation and make some money? If you are also putting people up as being wanted, and the leadership of Boko Haram that they placed from 5 to 10 to 50 million on the heads of their leadership, that doesn't sound to me like people who are talking about a dialogue. So clearly a dialogue is desirable as it is. I'm not sure that we have the right environment to have that conversation, precisely because I think a lot of the initiative has been lost.
So if it's not dialogue, what would you suggest could be possible solutions in dealing with Boko Haram?
Well, the truth of the matter is that I should not be ashamed, neither the government or anybody be ashamed to say there are certain things we can't understand, because frankly, I don't know. But it is to say that without trying to make excuses, it is also to say, Northern Ireland, we don't have to live like the people of Northern Ireland. But whether it's Northern Ireland, whether it's Pakistan, whether it's Afghanistan, whether it's Eritrea, whatever, different countries have coped with different problems. I think what I find missing is the lack of a backbone, a lack of steel on the side of government to really take full charge and full control of this problem. And this doesn't necessarily mean shooting people or just going around and shooting people. It is that, first of all, I think the earlier mistake we made was to put out so many soldiers and to approach Boko Haram with a military solution. The military mindset just does not have the capacity and does not have the ideological disposition to address the kind of issues that insurgencies or the kind of thing we are facing requires. Because what we require is human intelligence, people having confidence in government and security agencies, and people being able to communicate and pass information. But unfortunately, the military solution threw so many soldiers on the streets. These soldiers have turned out to become a far greater threat, and like many people will tell you around Maiduguri, than even Boko Haram itself. Plus, the military itself, a lot of soldiers are taking money on the streets. The security agencies, there are all kinds of compromises and so on. So the situation has become rather convoluted, and the result is that more and more people are exploiting the situation for personal gains. So it's a very complex situation, and frankly, I wish that the president himself were a bit more assertive, in terms of dealing with the issue as we face it.
So which one would you say is our biggest problem now? Is it corruption or insurgency? Which one is our bigger problem now?
It's chicken and egg. One produces the other. It's the corruption. Frankly, what I'm saying, in my belief, is that Boko Haram is actually a metaphor for explaining our corruption. And the truth of the matter is that I'm not talking here about corruption in terms of just people stealing money. I'm talking about the corruption of an entire system, whether it's the processes of getting into power, the processes of election, processes of appointing people to public office, the processes of recruitment to public life. I mean, all these are the kind of things that produce what we are now seeing. And the anger of the poor, such as what we now are experiencing with Boko Haram, is just, in my view, a manifestation of that. So that's why I said, for me, it's a symptom. But let's not look at corruption purely and simply from the point of view of people stealing money.
All
that
right.
is actually, it doesn't explain corruption in the way and manner that I understand it.
Okay, Bishop, we're almost done. I just wanted to ask if you know there has been like a rumor going about in the U.S. government think tank that Nigeria will break up in 2015. I just wanted to know if you heard about that and what's your opinion about it.
I don't know. I mean, Nigeria is not the 45th or 44th state of the United States of America or the 46th state, whatever. And I couldn't be bothered what Americans think. First of all, I mean, this analysis is quite spurious and the dates have been shifting. But I can tell you, this country is going to get stronger, it's going to get better. In 2015, I think Nigeria will be a much stronger nation. Never mind the shrill and the shrill media reaction. It doesn't speak to the issues as they are on the ground in Nigeria. I think majority of Nigerians, and I'm talking maybe something like close to 80-90% of ordinary Nigerians just want food on their table. They want a bit of environment with a bit of respect. They want to be able to send their kids to school and do the things that other people have come to take for granted. So I don't believe that this kind of doomsday predictions should occupy any space in our conversation.
So, Bishop, my last question is, do you foresee a revolution happening in Nigeria anytime soon?
It didn't happen 50 years ago. It's not going to happen again.
Can you say that one more time?
I said it should have happened 50 years ago. It didn't happen. It's not likely to happen. I don't know. Nobody is talking revolutions now.
Okay. Can you explain what you mean by that?
No, because I don't know what you mean by revolution. I mean, we frankly, I think that if in another 6 months or almost 1 year or in the next 1 year, if the Nigerian government is able to get electricity right and is able to get infrastructure right at the level of railways and so on, 60-70% of our social problems will probably be eliminated. I mean, the joblessness we're talking about is tied to people just being able to do some very basic things. Young Nigerians, and there are millions of them, are not lining up looking for jobs from government. Were we to have steady electricity, those young men women will be doing their own businesses right across this country. So, and I think that gradually things are beginning. They're painfully slow, but I think from what we see and from what we hear, in another month or two, hopefully, if we're able to have a train running from Kano to Lagos as the beginning of a massive change in the railway system, we should be. Quite frankly, I'm convinced that a lot of our problems will not be solved, but we'll be able to find it easier to manage them.
All right, Bishop Kukah, thank you so much for joining us today on Sahara TV. We really enjoyed your time.
God bless you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, viewers, that has been Bishop Hassan Kukah, and he's the head of the Catholic Diocese of Sokoto State. Stay tuned, we have more programs coming up.